President Botha gave you a warning not too long ago. He said if you are looking for trouble, Tutu, you're going to get it. Are you looking for trouble, Archbishop?
My work is God's work given to me. And if that gets me into trouble, then tough luck. I am not going to hold back because I am not doing anything I haven't done before. I am trying to be obedient to the mandates of the gospel.
When the South African Law and Order Minister says certain clergy are becoming more and more involved in preaching revolution, is it you he's talking about, Archbishop?
What does he mean by revolution is a question you should ask. I mean, is it revolution to say we want a South Africa that is non-racial, that is democratic, a South Africa where black and white can live harmoniously together? Is that revolution? If it is revolution, then we are preaching it.
Do you still condemn acts of violence when they're carried out by black militants?
How many times have I done that? I am as firm in my opposition to violence that comes from the opponents of apartheid as I am in my condemnation of the violence of... I keep saying it. I say I'm opposed to all forms of violence. And in fact, many young blacks regard me and others like me as moderates who ought by now to be pushed off center stage.
The reason I ask you these questions, Archbishop, is the last time we talked, you said if you were a young man today, you wouldn't listen to the advice of Desmond Tutu.
Yeah.
He's too moderate. But you still think that violence, no matter what the cause, no matter what the purpose, violence is wrong.
It is, yes. I mean, that is the teaching of the church. The church has been quite consistent, and I actually hold to that teaching. I am a conservative, theologically speaking, because when the church says there is a time when violence could be justifiable, it is not saying it condones the violence. It is saying that Christians individually have to make up their mind. Do you want to go to war to end, say, Nazism, or do you want to sit around and let Hitler continue to push babies into gas chambers? They're saying that is wrong and war is wrong, but you have to choose between the two evils, which is the lesser evil.
The South African government has cracked down heavily against the anti-apartheid groups. In fact, the church basically has taken up the mantle of that fight. Just how far is the church prepared to go?
We are going to go to the limit, non-violently opposing apartheid until it is dismantled.
Does that mean preaching civil disobedience?
There is no other way left to the church. I have said it is far better to say we are preaching obedience to God. It is a positive thing. It isn't a negative thing. We're not saying we're disobeying your law. We're saying we are obeying God's law. And God's law is for a just society. God's law is for sharing. God's law is for compassion. God's law is for caring. And anything that is opposed to that, anything that treats God's children as if they were rubbish. I mean, the church, if it is going to be true to the gospel, has got to come out strong in favor of God's little ones.
Canada has taken great pride in being a leading voice against apartheid.
Yep.
It's tried to do something with the other Commonwealth countries. It's spoken at the United Nations. Do you think Canada has gone far enough, or have we just been good in rhetoric and not so good in action?
You know what a schoolmaster usually says about most of his students. This is a good student, but there is room for improvement. You could say that about Canada. And I do want to pay a very warm tribute to the things that have been said and the things that have been done. But I will not rest until apartheid has been dismantled. That is the object of the exercise. That is our goal. And until that goal is achieved, nobody can rest on their laurels.
President Botha has offered a new proposal to expand the political role of blacks in South Africa. The blacks turned it down immediately. Isn't President Botha really in a no-win situation? Whatever he does is not enough for the blacks, it's too much for the conservative whites.
I have said to people that Mr. Botha is a courageous man. He has done and said things we didn't expect from a nationalist prime minister, state president. But I have also said we need to use a turnaround, an English expression. He does not have the convictions of his courage. He has moved only enough to annoy his right wing, and he will not move far enough to satisfy black aspirations until he gets rid of apartheid. We don't want concessions, little adjustments of apartheid. That won't satisfy us. And it will annoy his right wing as they see a steady erosion of the privileges that they've got.
Recently, we've heard many stories about apparent hit teams out to kill leading black activists.
Yep.
Do you believe there is a government-sponsored death squad or hit team killing these black activists?
I know that in a situation such as ours, the perpetrators of injustice and oppression will use methods such as those to try and liquidate their opponents. And who else would be interested in killing a Dulcie September in Paris? Who would have wanted to kill Albisex in Maputo? Who would have wanted to kill the ANC man in a hospital bed in Maseru, except those who support the system of injustice and oppression that is apartheid?
Do they want to kill Archbishop Tutu?
You have to accept that when you are in a struggle, liberation struggle against injustice and oppression, there will be casualties, and you don't have a special kind of exclusion from being a possible casualty.
There were very high hopes and great expectations, Archbishop, when you won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yep.
Here we are in 1988. You have an emergency measure still in effect in South Africa. Press censorship is sweeping the whole country. The extreme right has surged ahead in popularity. What happened to those high hopes, those great expectations?
The West let us down. The West let us down horribly badly. Mr. Botha and his supporters know that Mrs. Thatcher, President Reagan, Chancellor Kohl will always come between them and the just consequences, results and consequences of their actions. They will always protect them. We are struggling not just against apartheid in South Africa, we are struggling with the vested interests of the West. And until the West recognizes that, in fact, its best interests are going to be served by dismantling injustice and oppression, they will be swallowed in this morass of apartheid, because black people will say, it is clear, capitalism and the democracy that these people talk about in the West is okay for whites. When the victims of injustice and oppression are blacks, blood is thicker than water.
Archbishop, thank you for talking with us.
Thank you.